Eyes wide open. If you think Dogman is just a legend, keep watching. From shadowy figures stalking rural backroads, from towering wolf-like creatures emerging from the treeline, these sightings have left witnesses shaken, speechless, and forever changed. If you've ever wondered what really growls in the wilderness after sunset, you're in the right place. Don't forget to subscribe, and let's take a look.
This is not a test. Reports are spreading across the state. Sightings in the North Woods, strange transmissions near the lake shore. If you're listening to this transmission, you're a part of the awakening. Truth is a frequency most people tune out, but once you hear it, it's like an infection. Welcome to
Subject identified as Entity 246, codename the Dogman. Classification: Woodland Beast. Description: the Dogman is a bipedal, werewolf-like creature standing between 7 and 8 feet tall. Its muscular frame is covered in coarse dark fur, and it has a canine-like head with piercing yellow eyes that reflect light in the darkness. Its elongated limbs end in clawed hands and feet, and its powerful jaws are filled with sharp teeth. Sightings are concentrated around the dense forests near the Manistee National Forest in Michigan, with reports spanning decades. Its presence is often marked by unearthly howls that can echo for miles, described by witnesses as a chilling mix of wolf cries and human screams. Behavior: nocturnal predator. The Dogman is most active at night, stalking isolated campsites and rural roads. Territorial guardian. It appears to patrol a defined territory, warning off intruders with its howls or by showing itself briefly. Despite its size and power, the Dogman is exceptionally stealthy, disappearing before anyone can approach it. Unique traits: 1. Terrifying howl. Its vocalizations strike an instinctual fear into humans and animals, often paralyzing them with dread. 2. Supernatural speed. Witnesses report the Dogman can move at impossible speeds, blurring into the forest when pursued. 3. Heightened awareness. The creature seems to be hyper-aware of its surroundings, avoiding cameras or traps with uncanny precision. While the Dogman has not been known to attack unprovoked, its territorial nature and intimidating presence make it a significant threat to those who stray too close. Weaknesses: 1. Bright light sensitivity. It avoids areas with strong artificial light and retreats when spotlights or flares are used. Solitary nature. The Dogman is always reported as a lone entity, suggesting it does not have the advantage of a pack. Addendum: the Dogman legend dates back to the late 1800s, with consistent sightings occurring every decade since. A famous sighting in 1987 near the Manistee National Forest brought national attention to the cryptid, with a camper recording its haunting howl on a cassette tape. Local lore ties the Dogman to Native American myths of spirit guardians, believed to protect the forest from human encroachment. Skeptics suggest it could be a misidentified bear or a hoax, but the sheer number of encounters and consistency of descriptions suggest otherwise. Many who encounter the Dogman report lingering nightmares and an inexplicable pull to return to the forest, as if the beast leaves a psychological mark on its victims.
The only reason I saw it was because it was blacker than the shadows behind it. Kind of made it off-put from the background. And I'm thinking, there's a demon in the bushes with horns. And it stood up, and its ears moved. And that's when I realized they were ears and not horns. And I got a good look at it, and I'm thinking, oh my God, it's a flipping werewolf. Now this thing was so big, I mean, like so tall. Its shoulders and neck were really broad, like it was wearing football gear or something, but the rest of the body was skinny and lean. I don't know how I unlocked my mind from the panic and terror that had just suddenly washed over me, but I've got my feet up from under me, and I started running as hard as I could down the trail. I just dropped my towel and everything and just hauled it as hard as I could. When I was about halfway down the trail, I turned and looked back to see if it was chasing me. And I swear, Vic, I swear it was standing exactly the same distance away from me as it was the first time, about 15 to 20 feet. But it was in the middle of the trail this time. And I saw it had dog legs, but I was terrified and I was not paying attention to its hands or feet or anything like that. It had a long snout, but it never opened its mouth. I never got to see its tongue or its teeth or anything like that. It was just simply casually watching me and waiting, which made it kind of even creepier because I didn't know what to expect from it. So I ran as hard as I could back to the parking area, and Mom and Dad and the friends were sitting down there waiting for me. I screamed, "There's a werewolf after me." And they all laughed real big. And one guy said, "He's going to write books when he's older. He's got a heck of an imagination." But I know I didn't imagine that. It didn't chase me out of the woods, but it definitely followed me.
Good question. Leone asks a question. Nick, do you think Dogman lives underground? I'm going to let you start with that one. Nick, what do you think?
Definitely. I definitely think they have underground lairs. They have the on-ground lairs that are like, just think of a large haystack, and they burrow into there. There are reports that I've taken, hundreds, that they're in caves, natural caves and man-made caves, mines. You know, the mines that they're abandoned these days. They're all over the place in actuality. I mean, I found them in New Jersey. I found them across the border in Pennsylvania, in New Hope, Pennsylvania, Lambertville, New Jersey. I had reports there, which we actually investigated. And a lady's dog was missing, and we found footprints. And I would swear to it that it's a Dogman footprint, because the print was literally 15 inches long, and it had claw marks, and it didn't look anything like a wolf print at all.
This thing was 7 feet, 6 inches tall. Yeah, we measured it, like I said, to my eye on the stop sign, and we checked the area, and I didn't find anything. Years later, I find out that the Lenape Indians had a home up there in the Watchung Mountains long time ago, and that there was a burial ground there. And through my research, I also found that Dogman, sometimes they guard the burial ground of the Native Americans.
It was breathing. Feel it standing over me on the single track. I know it was looking down at me. I could feel it breathing. And I don't even know how long the encounter was. I really don't. In my head, afterwards, when I thought about it, I just thought, why don't you just get this over with? What are you waiting for? Like, it's torture. I was too afraid. I can't, like I said, I can't even describe to you the fear. I thought I was going to die. My heart was pounding. I could hear this thing breathing. I just couldn't look at it. What I said to you, and the thing that I didn't tell you in the email was, I didn't even know that I had peed my pants. I didn't even know that. It's amazing. I didn't even know that. I wet myself. I heard it do I couldn't talk to anybody about it because my best friend and my husband made fun of me. I thought, these are the people that I love the most. If they're going to do that to me, there's no way I'm telling anybody what happened. So I filed it away. But then I went down the hole of trying to figure out what the hell was that. It just didn't, it felt supernatural. That's the only way I can describe it to you. I heard it, boom, when I landed on the trail. I felt like I was an insignificant nothing. It could have killed me. I really felt like my life was in danger. I've never felt like that. We've hiked all over. I've come across a grizzly. That was really scary. Nothing compared to that fear that I felt. I really focused on the legs because I couldn't compute that. I did look up at the face. It was, like I said, a dog's face with the really pointed ears. It was tall and thin, and it had really short, shiny, sleek fur. That's the only way I can do. Like, it almost looked like, the only way I can describe it is a 3D image,
like a hologram.
Yes, that's what it looked like. Like, it was so perfect. The blackness of it and the short fur, it was this. It almost looked like a Doberman. And I remember the legs because I was like, "What?" They were really muscular. The waist part, like this part here, like it was just ripped. It was kind of like, it reminded me of a cheetah, a sleek cat looking down at me.
This came from a very good friend of mine. He's actually one of our trackers out in the field. He recorded this off his property, and he's had an audio recorder set now because they'd had some activity. I honestly do not know what it is. I think they may have a dogman in the area. But anyway, shall we?
Or 99, me and 5 other guys camping. No drinking that night at all. You know, it was just good, clean fun. We left. You know, we got out of there.
You know, I believe what he said, you know, because, well, in that.
Amber, yellow, or red. At some point in time, the military discovered these things and they started to weaponize them in a super soldier program.
So they're eyewitness accounts of these super soldiers?
Oh, yes.
Wow. Have any of these things been deployed in conflict?
Absolutely. There's been lots of reports about them being deployed in operations in Syria as well as operations in the Middle East.
Interesting. I haven't found any evidence of that.
With my background, I've got connections to sources that a lot of other people don't have. And it's difficult telling you what they said because it's classified.
So how many dogmen do you think are potentially out in the woods of Michigan?
Hundreds. I would only be speculating to know.
But how far away were you from when you saw it?
I want to say probably 30 feet.
Jake Sheetenhelm is a local hunter and trapper who says he's had a recent dogman sighting not far from this stream.
My friend had come over and he knew that I'd been trapping, so he wanted to see what that was all about. And we go to check the traps. As soon as we got close to the farthest trap away, we heard a branch snap. And it's when we saw this thing. It was a silhouette at first, and it was huge with golden amber eyes, tall German Shepherd-like ears, and after it takes a few steps towards us, it stands up. It already looked massive, but this thing must have been 7 foot plus.
That is giant. And you were watching this thing walk towards you?
Yeah. My muscles weren't listening to my brain. My friend, he was all elbows back to the house. That should only exist in nightmares. The next morning, my friend and I went out there and, we found the tracks and they were dog prints, but they were bigger than my hand.
That's huge.
Yeah.
Wolf tracks can be very, very big. I mean, they can be about that big, but you're saying it was bigger than that.
It was much bigger than that.
Interesting. Before this incident, what did you think of the dogman?
Thought it was a legend. I thought it was a scary story to tell around the campfire, tell your friends, but your eyes can't lie that much when 2 people see it. It's not something that should exist in nature. It's a nightmare that's come true.
Okay, I'm looking for Dogman. Where do I go?
Well, first of all, you shouldn't be looking for them. That's my best advice. But you should be looking in rural areas or areas connected to the DNR specifically. Department of Natural Resources. You want to look for very strange structures out in the wilderness. Things that are completely out of place and don't belong there. For example, just north of Reed City, you have the Miller Airport. Miller Airport is a huge facility. Reed City is a very small town with a very small population. It just doesn't make sense.
That's strange.
It's very strange. And it has a history of military involvement and operations that have taken place there. And it's right on the border of DNR property. So all of that makes it an extreme hotspot. I talked to a source of mine who told me that they call that place Dogman Hotel.
Kimberly McGeorge, NDCNH, and I tried to record this earlier, and shocker, my phone went dead. So I wanted to talk to you a little bit about national parks and state parks. And yes, they're protected because they're beautiful areas, but mainly they're protected because they're ley line areas. And most of the ley lines in this country and around the world. Not all of them. Most of them, or majority of them, are held by dark force energies. And because they're held by dark force energies, underground bases and things have been built under these parks, as well as entrances that have been there for centuries, I guess, to inner earth. So you can literally stumble into a world where you can't navigate and you may not be able to get out. Also, there's a lot of portals because of the ley lines and just the portal energies in these parks. So a lot of times when people are disappearing, they're not being taken by Dogmen, they're not being taken by Sasquatch, they're not being taken by aliens. I mean, they might be, but literally they're walking into other worlds. They're walking into inner earth. They may have stumbled into a base because there's a lot of holographic coverings that people inadvertently, because people are dumb and people are nosy and people can't see the dimensions, and so they can't navigate some of these places, and so they get themselves in things that they can't get out of. Yeah, some people are picked off the trail and brought for experimentation and lose time and all of that. Yeah, some people are killed by crazies on things like the Appalachian Trail and stuff like that. Not saying there's not logical, quote, 3D explanations, but a lot of the David Pilates 411 stuff is BS. He knows what's going on. He's a paid informant. He's part of the whole thing. He's been proven to be a liar on many occasions. And so a lot of this, in my opinion, is they're walking through portals and they're not being able, to navigate their way back out, or maybe a one-way portal because of the ley lines. They're walking into inner earth again. They're not being able to get back out. They may be in a base. They might not want them to get back out. So a lot of these disappearances or deaths are a result of not necessarily super mystical stuff, but definitely things that most of you aren't familiar with that some of us are. So my warning and my caution is be very careful when you go. Stay in crowds, stay in the more public places. Don't go off exploring on your own. If you get like a spidey sense of something wrong, pay attention to that. I don't recommend camping in state parks or national parks, which is funny because I basically live practically in a state park, but my property also is a portal property on 4 acres of quartz. So that's going to automatically kind of make it really magical and mystical, which is great for me because of my knowledge and what I do. But it's not so great for other people. Not everybody would love it here. And there's probably places on my property that I shouldn't walk into and I might not get out of as well. So
Vigil was walking down the road and he sees at first what he thought was a dog like rolling around on the ground. And he was like, what in the heck is that? This thing stands up after it was moving around on the ground, and he realizes that it wasn't rolling around the ground. This quarry or whatever, it looks like a limestone quarry. Like I said, I don't know. That's what he described it as. This thing was coming up off of like a small cliff, like there's a little short cliff, like steps. And he thought that it was a dog rolling around, but he was just looking at the head and the shoulders. When it got up to the top of this shelf and was on even footing with him, it noticed him. Now, he didn't say this thing was overly large. He said it was about 6.5 to 7 foot tall, which is big, but not. We've heard of Dogman reports way bigger than that. The interesting thing about this Dogman, though, or this werewolf, as he described it, is that he really believed that it was like a wolf walking on 2 legs, not a man-like wolf thing. And he was pretty adamant. He said, dude, it looked like a wolf. Like that had learned to walk on its hind legs.
But dude, everybody you talk to, just look in their eyes, bro. Like, had it not been for the judge, and had it not been for my friend that lives down the road, I wouldn't believe in Dogman. I give it the chance because I believe those 2 people. I really do. I really believe that what happened to them happened to them. But dude, everybody you talk to, just look in their eyes, bro. They don't know what they're looking at. And I don't know, like this guy I interviewed last week, the thing talked to him. Like spoke English to him and like was in the conversation. You know what I'm saying? And what do you take from that? Because he also said it's a flesh and blood creature. It's a flesh and blood creature that knew English, right? And then also was able to make his mother's voice and then make his father's voice, right? And then knew about the other kid hurting small animals. Okay. And this guy's going through this traumatic experience, right? And he's telling me it's super hard for me to talk about because it's traumatic.
Now, in order to do a good, diagnostic on DNA, you have to have something called the skin tag, which is like the root of the hair. And so they got those, they acquired them, and they contacted a woman by the name of Melba Ketchum, Dr. Melba Ketchum. She was working for someone else in a lab somewhere. And because of the work she was doing and helping these guys, she had lost her job and she was even getting death threats. Since then, she created something, I believe it's called DNA Analytics. It's her own place to process DNA. And with mitochondrial DNA, which would be from the mother, came back as human woman. The nuclear DNA that comes from the father came back as unknown, nothing that's ever been on record anywhere, any place, anytime.
My friend Kayla and I heard this vocalization, and several months had passed, and I was in another area, which is there's 18,000 acres, and where I heard the vocalization was perhaps center. On this next encounter where I was working this day, it was on the most western part of the WMA, probably close to 10 miles from where I heard the vocalization. So I'm working dogs, and they go to an area which is known as Needle's Eye Mountain, which is very treacherous. I don't commonly work there. I try to stay away from it, but the dogs stray from location sometime. And on this day, they were doing exactly what I had trained them to do. So I didn't command them to come back. I have to go where they go. It's my responsibility. So I pursued my way towards them, and I'm actually on my stomach climbing up this mountain because it's so steep. I'm grabbing vines, saplings, whatever I can get my hands on to, help myself up. And I hear the dogs start making a bark that is known as a booger bark. It is when they have found something that they're not familiar with. Bears are common in this area. I know they have encountered some. They normally do not pursue them. For them to make this booger bark, as I call it, is not common at all. I would think that they have already found everything that is native to this area. So, of course, I'm trying to get up as fast as I can to see what they have found. And here they come. They come running past me. One literally jumps over me, sliding and running and whatever they can do to get down this, back down this mountain, and they're scared. And so I cannot stop them. They're very, very well trained, very obedient, disciplined, and I try to command them to stop, and they continue to leave. And so, of course, out of curiosity, I continue in the pursuit to see what is up there. And as I near the crest, I start hearing splashes in water. And that's when I saw what I know now, what Kayla and I heard that night. So as I pulled myself over the crest, and I'm hearing these splashes of water, it wasn't something small. I knew before I even got my first look that it was going to be something large. And as I looked down, I saw I can't call it a animal. It was a creature that was very hairy. It stood upright, but it's hard to describe because my attention was drawn. It was so bizarre. It was grasping in its hand a hunter's orange hat. Perhaps someone had dropped out of a truck or lost on the trail, whatever it may be, but it was grasping a hunter's orange hat, and it never turned to look at me, but it knew I was there. Why it waited for me to appear rather than the dogs to leave, but it did. It jumped out of water, probably knee deep to this thing, which I don't know how tall it was. It all happened so fast. But it jumped onto another bluff and was gone. And there's no way for me to get even a glimpse of it, because I've already worked so hard to get to where I'm at. And I just had to sit there for a while. I mean, this is something I have spent all of my life in the woods, and I've seen just about everything there is that is native to Arkansas. And this is something that I've never seen before. And as I sat there, taking in what I had just encountered, I start reliving that night that Kayla and I was running the trap line and the noise we heard. And it was just shocking. Still to this day, as I think about it, even here today telling this story, I mean, it sends chills down my arms. And it's not actually frightening. It's just amazing to know that there is something out there that we don't know anything about. And it's just giving me shivers all up my head right now. I'm talking about it. It's just amazing. It really is.
Okay, tonight we are going to go into another one of the files from my great-grandfather Leopold that I found under the house during my live. Another interesting one, been doing a lot of research about these. That's why they've been a little bit slow coming out, but let's just go into it. Okay, it says, multiple dog-man sightings in Panhandle. This one puzzles me. Does not all capped, seem to be lycanthropes, Voltkin, or anything else I know. Maybe some kind of modern Ulfenheiner, some weird word, I'll show you what that means. Very aggressive, intelligent, possibly human level, unorganized, at least for now. And then he has several updates talking about basically how he hasn't found anything. For a little bit he thinks maybe it's mass hallucination, but he's changes his mind on that. He goes on to say, deeper dive has me thinking might be related to Harold's writings about Vienna. Now, if you remember in here, from Harold's journal, and Harold was Leopold's grandfather, he talked about how lycanthropes were creatures that sound like, like a classic wolf man, just a man covered in hair with claws and teeth. And something that some group did in Vienna seemed to create this much more monstrous version that sounds like a dog man. He goes on to talk about more suppression, and the suppression of the stories is what makes him really believe something's going on. He also mentions reaching out to Edgar again. Now this seems to have been a contact, someone he knew in the Psalms. He thought they were the ones suppressing it, and he says that he did reach out to this Edgar person, and they told him either to join up or stay back, and that's the last thing he says about it here. Okay, so first, what is a dogman? You know, my research showed me that it's some kind of cryptid, kind of related with some of the Bigfoot Sasquatch phenomena. You know, they never mention Leopold, Harold, none of them ever mention anything about anything like Bigfoot. This is the closest thing. And here's a picture I found of a supposed dogman on the internet. And here is an apparent artist's rendition, like a police sketch of what people claim to see. As you can see, it's basically just a horrifying werewolf. Now, I couldn't find anything about reports of this in Florida or in the Panhandle, which, if you don't know, is a part of Florida. I did find about the Michigan Dogman, you know, goes back to 1887, and, you know, I do know that there are more stories about this, not just in Michigan, but it is the most famous one. And finally, this Olfenar thing that he mentions kind of has a really cool and random connection to me. I'll talk to you guys about it. You see here, these are the wolf berserkers. Basically, they were like, you know how berserkers were bears? These guys were wolves, essentially. So Leopold apparently thought it could be a modern version of that, and who knows what that would be like.
The past almost 60 years on or near the Whitego Indian Reserve out in the country, rural community, it provides an opportunity for a lot of experience out there that a lot of other folks that maybe inner city people don't have the same opportunity to be open to these type of experiences. And there was this one experience that I would relay again, something that in this instance, my family, my relatives, my mother, my aunts, back in those days when I was just a kid in the Whitego area there, there was an old wooden building that used to be the Ponca Indian Agency. There was only about 4 houses in that area. And there was another house further down this dirt road, where my grandma Mildred Warrior, the late grandma Mildred Warrior, used to live with her family. But you would be lucky in those days to see law enforcement. We only got a county deputy to drive through maybe once a month if you were lucky. Sometimes you might go 2 or 3 months without seeing a K County deputy drive through, but that's the way it was on Indian country back then. And on one particular time, there was this younger deputy who knew some of my aunts, maybe went to school with them, would be the guy to come riding through, and every now and then he would stop and visit with my aunts and what have you. And one of those instances, he asked one of my aunts to go on a ride with him because he was going to ask her a couple questions about the community. So she did. They went riding around the community there, and he said, I'm going to ask you a question. It's not real important or nothing, but do you guys have somebody around here that trains dogs? And, the only kind of dog training going on in that time of the 1960s and early 70s might have been training our dogs to hunt raccoons, coon dogs, and hound dogs kind of thing. And she said, why? He said, no, well, does anybody train circus dogs? And she was just kind of, circus dogs, I don't know anything about circus dogs, just regular training them how to hunt coon dogs or chase rabbits or whatever. And she said, well, why are you asking about that? And they were riding by the community, and as everybody knows from the Whitego Reserve, there's a old mission sitting right there by the Methodist Church that goes way back in our tribal history, where way back when our funerals, our body would lay in state there, and family members would bring their own pillows and blankets. And of course, those of you who are familiar with our tribal ways, 4 days, our funerals last for 4 days. The body stays there and lies in wait during those 4 days before we take them to the cemetery and bury them. And that's what that place was used for. Had different uses, but throughout the years, that's what they used it for. And that's what she was telling him. And she said, "Why are you interested in this building right here?" He said, he pulled in and was shining his headlights on the north doors. And young people used to go in there and play basketball and this and that. And he said, "Well, I was driving by the other night and the doors were open a little bit like they are now." And he said, "I thought maybe somebody was in there and was going to look out and wave or whatever." He said, "But nobody came out. And so I just started backing up." He said, "And while the lights were still on the door comes open." He said, "I look up and there is what looked like a police dog, a German Shepherd type looking dog, come walking out." And she didn't think anything, my aunt didn't think anything of that, but he said it came walking out and it was walking on its hind legs. And so that's why I wondered, is there somebody that trains this dog how to do that? And in this particular area of our res and our myths and what have you, when something like that happens, you see something like that, it's not a good thing. It's maybe a bad spirit or something to see something do that. And he said it came out and just walked around the building, and he didn't think nothing of it. Thought somebody trained a dog how to do that. But in our culture, in our tribe, sometimes people talk about those entities that might appear like that. So it's always been taught to us, seeing something like that, it's not a good thing. More taken as a evil presence or evil spirit, so to speak, or whatever. But for a white county police officer to offer that story up to my aunt way back then, it lends some credibility to being that close to our tribal powwow grounds, which has a lot of history. Aside from being just a place to powwow, there's a lot of history there that we've been told over time. So that's just another one of those stories from way back then.
Story that my father has told me and has not wanted me to share with anybody until after his passing. Well, my dad passed away back in 2013, and I feel like it would be good if people know what he had to say. I know some people might not believe him, but he has been keeping this on him for a while and was never able to talk about it. He wanted to wait till after he passed so his life wouldn't be in jeopardy. My father was a part of a special military branch. He would never tell me the name, but he told me that they executed special missions. One mission that him and his small crew of 5 other agents were tasked to take down a pack of extremely aggressive wolf creatures in Oklahoma. Apparently, the same creatures had killed 2 people, several livestock, and were causing a bunch of havoc. My father told me that at first he didn't think it was real and that they were playing a joke on him. The military knows these things exist, and they even have a special name, which he never repeated to me. They're not referred to, though, as werewolves or dogmen, as we know them. I can never get a direct answer from him, but I believe from what he's told me that they are a direct result of the military's doing in some way or another. Him and his team were sent out to Oklahoma. There is a discreet remote location that they were dropped off at that led right to the woods that they needed to be in. He told me it took them less than 24 hours to track these beasts, and he said it took a lot of ammo and the right weapons, but eventually they got the whole pack down. It took 5 days, and they lost 2 agents in the mission. He went on to tell me that these creatures were brutal and savage, and he almost lost his hand to having it almost bitten off entirely. He's had scars on his body and his back growing up my entire life, and told me he got those scars from this mission, and he had never told me what they were from before. He was physically attacked and almost torn wide open when his partner shot this thing off my father with a .50 caliber rifle. He explained to me that killing these things was no easy feat. They don't die easily, and they could take a lot of punishment. He says they weren't animals they were dealing with. These are super beings. They were more intelligent than we could have ever imagined, and were outsmarted on several occasions when we tried to trap them and strategize. He said that after 5 days, and they had completed the mission, they had to rid the bodies, and he never explained to me how they did that. He said after they were picked up from the mission, they were told specifically about this mission that they can never reveal any details or else their lives would be in jeopardy. This happened back in the 90s, and so I didn't really find out about a lot of these details until close to him passing. Even then, he still wouldn't tell me everything there is to know, and I wonder why to this day he carried so much of that information to the grave with him. However, he did reveal an interesting fact. Out where he was, in the area that he was hunting these beasts in Oklahoma, there were Indian burial mounds all throughout. What him and his crew discovered is that inside these mounds were what he described as staircases that led down a really long ways. He told me that he believed that whatever these things were guarding these mounds for a reason, and that they were coming in and out of these mounds from underneath the earth. Now, of course, this is just his findings and what he relayed to me.
Everything seems to go back to when the disc jockey released the song The Dogman. And it was a very popular song around Halloween time. But according to legends, this goes back to the early logging camps. When men would go into the forest, they would cut down the logs. And one of the original stories was that there was a group of dogs that ran into the loggers' camp, and the camp was, had all these dogs running around, and the men were throwing rocks at these dogs. And they kind of isolated one and were throwing more rocks at that one. And then the dog stood up on its back legs and proceeded to retaliate. And that is said to be where, according to the early loggers, the Dogman legend started. And then we've got reports of hunters being out in a boat or fishermen out in a boat. And what they thought was a hunting dog swam up to the boat, and they started trying to pull the hunting dog in because, hey, a loose hunting dog can be a valuable asset. But then they were kind of shocked when the dog took the initiative and put one arm over each side of the boat and was trying to pull itself in. And these were not dog paws. These were clawed hands. And so they promptly escaped from there. We do have Native American legends that suggest that there is a Dogman type creature here in the Great Lakes area. But most people became aware of the Dogman legend when that song was released, and the footage that they said that they captured, first they said, oh, it's real. And then they said it was faked. And then they went back and said it was real. And I've seen the footage, and you're like, oh, that's too good to be true. And unfortunately it was. But since then, people have come forward, and what they initially thought were Bigfoot reports, now they start remembering details. Like, well, our Bigfoot had a snout, it had ears, it had a tail. That's no longer a Bigfoot, that's a Dogman.
Really get these stories, you have to get the place. This is not the rainy, super green Washington you're probably picturing. Eastern Washington, it's a whole different beast. It's this mix of huge open fields, almost desert-like terrain, and these deep, carved-out canyons. And if you ask the people who live there, there's just something off about it. As one local said, plain and simple, it's a creepy driving through there at night. Now, here's where it gets really interesting. This landscape was literally born from absolute chaos. I mean, we're talking about massive, world-ending ice age floods that just scoured the earth, carving out the very land we see today. This wasn't some slow, gentle process. No, this was a violent geological nightmare that shaped every single inch of this place. And just to give you an idea of the power we're talking about, the water that ripped through here had the combined force of every single river on Earth. The flow was 5 times wider than Niagara Falls. So when you're dealing with a place that was forged by that kind of raw, destructive energy, you have to wonder, what could have possibly survived? Or what might have been left behind? Just a short drive away, around a place called Hawk Creek, the stories are about a whole different legend. A mysterious, upright canine creature, a dogman, that's been terrorizing the area for the better part of 100 years. And listen, this is not some modern thing. The reports go way, way back to the 1930s and 40s. You had ranchers blaming an upright canine for snatching and killing their cattle and sheep. The stories just kept coming through the decades, right up to a terrifying encounter in 2008, where some high school campers were woken up at 4 a.m. by howling and the sound of something crunching just outside their tents. So what happened when people tried to hunt this thing? Well, they failed every time. It didn't matter what the ranchers or townsfolk did. This creature was always one step ahead. They'd form hunting parties, they'd lay out traps, but it was just too clever. It consistently outsmarted them, which led them to believe this wasn't just some animal. It was an apex predator with incredible intelligence. I mean, that's the billion-dollar question, isn't it? Are these just cases of mistaken identity? Is it just local folklore run wild? Or is there something real? Something tangible and undiscovered lurking out in that dramatic landscape? There's no one easy answer, but the ideas are wild. Could these things be a species of primordial man, like a missing link that survived those ancient floods by hiding underground? Or maybe, did European settlers bring their old world werewolf legends with them and just pin them on a real native predator? What if these creatures are just competing for food in a really harsh place? There's even a theory that radioactive leaks from the Hanford site nearby could be creating genetic mutations. Or maybe, just maybe, we're seeing actual survivors from the Ice Age, megafauna that are somehow still clinging to life in this one isolated spot. So in the end, that's what we're left with. What are people really seeing out there? Is it a new species, hidden from science? Are they ancient curses dragged over from the old world and given new life? Or, and this is a big one, in a place that was forged by such unimaginable violence, could these creatures be something else entirely? Something that was actually born from the chaos that shaped the land itself? The answer, it seems, is still out there, hiding in the canyons.
This Dogman thing, it's multi-layered. It's not just one thing. It can look like, oh, that's a Dogman, but where did it come from? Because I think they come from different spots and places, and I think that how they become Dogman. I do think that there are people that have these abilities through occultic rituals, but also very supernatural means. And I will just say this, and this is really crazy. It's never been on the show before, but I know of a guy who at one time in his life, I don't think he can anymore. At one time in his life, he could shapeshift into a Dogman, what he called a werewolf. And he was very well known amongst these types of circles. And he's not the only one. There is a guy I talked to earlier this year in another state, face to face. And he talked about how he had a girlfriend that he dated, and she was one of these werewolves. And she wasn't the only one. There was a group of them, and there was warring fractions. And there was a group of, we'll just call werewolves, that were from Tennessee and lower Kentucky that were coming to their state. And it was like Underworld type-esque fighting amongst these werewolves, territorial type stuff.
Today I'm going to talk about the death of Christopher Allen Whitley. He was not your stereotypical good guy. He was an imperfect human being with a prison record. But that doesn't mean he didn't matter. It doesn't mean his death didn't matter. I'm going to read a full reporting of his death and investigation that was written by journalist Morgan O'Hanlon. It was on December 2nd, 2020, that Christopher decided to ultimately hitchhike to work. It was around 9 a.m. when he walked out of his girlfriend's home near a small town of the name of Lipan, Texas, which is southwest of Fort Worth in Hood County. According to the county sheriff's office, that morning he took a shortcut through dense brush to get to Howl Road, a narrow country lane where he planned to hitchhike to his job painting houses. Christopher never made it to work. The next day, a missing persons report was filed for Christopher. This led to the Hood County Sheriff deputies searching in between the girlfriend's house and Howl Road. Per the article by the journalist Morgan O'Hanlon, they first spotted Whitley's backpack beneath a cedar tree. Then about 15 feet away, they spotted Whitley's body in a brush so dense that it was a miracle that our deputies found him, said Lieutenant Johnny Rose, one of the on-scene investigators and the spokesperson for the sheriff's office. The Hood County Justice of the Peace, Catherine Gwynn, arrived on the scene to determine the cause of death. She had seen victims killed by guns, knives, and car crashes, but nothing like this. Whitley's throat from under one ear to the other was torn open. Small, thin scratches marked his torso, forehead, and one side of his face. He was shirtless. Even though the weather had been cold, we had no idea of what exactly happened. After going over the scene, we couldn't make those calls at all, Gwen told reporter Morgan O'Hanlon. The small county of Hood doesn't have a medical examiner, so Gwen called in one from the neighboring county of Tarrant. But even before that ME could make it to Hood, there was already rumors and the news got wind of the story, and they were stating it was a mountain lion attack and killing. In the official report by Susan J. Rowe, who was the deputy medical examiner that was called in, she had wrote and stated the punctures and lacerations on his neck were consistent with that of a large cat, a mountain lion. But Gwen was confused because Hood County had its share of coyotes, bobcats, and even an escaped kangaroo, but they've never had a documented mountain lion sighting in the county, much less an attack. And this is according to TPWD records. But of course it was already too late because the news had gotten wind of its first mountain lion fatal attack in Texas. And of course it made headlines. That's all anybody and everybody was talking about. That Christopher Whitley was killed by a mountain lion. Statistically speaking, mountain lions have killed fewer than 30 humans in the U.S., and majority of those attacks and fatalities were in California. With the news going haywire with its mountain lion attack and killing, people were panicking. They were worried, rightly so. So Sheriff Roger Deeds decided to bring in specialists for assistance. The first one was Britton Stuckey, a Hood County game warden. He went to the scene the day after Whitley's body was found, and in his site visit report, Stuckey wrote that he found no evidence of a mountain lion attack. The usual telltale signs were all absent. There were no lion prints, feces, or territorial scrapes, which are small mounds of debris that lions pile up and mark with urine at most kill sites. He did note the large presence of human tracks and disturbances from most likely the first responders at the scene. He advised the sheriff's office to reach out to a Texas park and wildlife biologist for further expert assistance with the investigation. The next specialist that was brought in was Jonah Evans. At that time, he was a mammalologist for TPWD, and he believed there was no way that a mountain lion had killed Whitley. Some of the distinctive markers of a mountain lion attack, including clear marks from canine teeth and missing organs from the abdomen, weren't evident. Evans, being an expert in animal tracking who has seen hundreds of mountain lion kills in person and in photos, was tasked with leading TPWD's effort to assist the sheriff's investigation. He pointed out the lack of lion tracks in the soil. On Saturday, December 5th, 2 days after Whitley's body was found, the third investigator was brought in, Mike Bodenchuk, who was an experienced mountain lion trapper and director of Wildlife Services Texas, a division of U.S. Department of Agriculture. Bodenchuk started at ground zero, the dense thicket where sheriff's deputies recovered Whitley, then worked his way outward. The only animal tracks he found within 150 yards were those of coyotes, deer, hogs, house cats, and dogs. Bodenchuk stated in his report, in 2 locations I identified tracks of a mid-sized dog. He determined that they were made maybe 2 or 3 days apart and likely indicated that a free-roaming dog lived nearby. Ultimately, he determined it was not a mountain lion that killed Christopher. 2 days after his visit to Howl Road, Bodenchuk walked into the ME's office in Tarrant County. He had a mountain lion skull with him. He wanted to show Susan Rowe and the personnel why he had ruled out a mountain lion killing Christopher. Mountain lions kill their prey by stalking it. They attack from behind. The cat will jump on its prey's back, digging its claws into the flesh while latching onto the neck and throat with its teeth. It uses its strong jaws to crush the windpipe, killing by asphyxiation. With a lion's small but powerful jaw, the bite marks are almost dainty. Typically 2 puncture marks on each side of the throat with minimal blood. They crush rather than tear major arteries. Only later, hours after the kill, does the lion return to feed. Whitley's throat, however, had been torn wide open. He had died of blood loss, and the scratches on his body were superficial, bearing none of the puncture wound that would come with a lion latching its large curved claws into his flesh. There were no signs that his body had been fed upon. Bodenchuk explained, lions tend to leave behind significant signs of struggle with their prey, such as disturbed leaves, broken twigs, distinctive tracks. The scene where Christopher was found was minimally disturbed. It didn't appear as if Christopher's body had been cached, a behavior in which lions hide their kills so they can return for multiple feedings. According to Bodenchuk, Evans, and Stuckey, all three men said that it was more likely that Whitley fell or crawled into the brush where his body was found. Bodenchuk concluded that an animal may very well have killed Whitley, but it was no lion. Without being able to examine Whitley's trachea, which had been removed from his body by the medical examiner's office, he was unable to offer more definitive analysis. On January 25th, Susan Rowe delivered her final autopsy to the sheriff's office. She ruled Christopher Whitley's death an accident and reported that had been found in his system. The cause of death, injuries of the neck due to animal attack. The reference to a mountain lion or any specific animal of any kind had been dropped. The next day, the Hood County Sheriff's Office wrote in a press release that it was closing its investigation into Whitley's death, saying that it agreed with the medical examiner's conclusion, since there was no signs of foul play in his death. Lieutenant Johnny Rose further explained the theory. The blood evidence showed that he was attacked when he was standing up. It wasn't something where he was laying down, passed out, or asleep or whatever. He was standing when he was attacked, Rose said, describing Whitley's fatal injuries. Those injuries are consistent with an animal ripping out someone's throat. If a mountain lion didn't kill Christopher, then who or what did? DNA testing could have helped answer that question. But unsurprisingly, the sheriff's office did not request any type of DNA testing or evidence. So, per the procedure of Tarrant County Medical Office, after they completed and concluded the autopsy, they washed the body, which effectively eliminated any potential evidence of DNA. Ultimately, this surprised Evans, because at that time, they had not determined a cause of death. Christopher Allen Whitley died in December of 2020. His case was closed with a tidy little bow, but yet so many questions remain. And that one question, the most important one, has never been answered. What killed Christopher Allen Whitley?
All right. Hello, my name is Ben Arkakita. I'm enrolled Ponca tribal member. I'm also part Oto, Missouri. And I want to share a story, experience that I had back in 2004. So let's go back to 2004. It's November night, late November. The community up in Whitey, where I live, we play basketball all evening. And wintertime is not much else to do playing basketball. So we were all playing there and at the gymnasium, which is probably a quarter of a mile from the Kay and Noble County line. And that's where our gym is at. And everybody left, and I said, I'll lock up. So I went around and locked the doors, and I went out the east side of the west side of the building on the south side, and I came around to the north side. It was about 10 o'clock at night. I believe it was a Tuesday night. And I started walking on a nice, clear, cloudless night, bright moon, pretty cold. And I'm just walking back home since I live locally right there in the community. And I get probably on the road, blacktop road leading back to the community, and I get right in front of our senior citizens building, and I hear this The only way I've described it to different ones over the years is it sounded like a wolf, a werewolf, if you will, not from a mile or two away, but really, really close. So much of it is, it's not just something I hear, it's loud. It sounds like it's really, really close. I don't know what it is. It shocked me so much when I turned around. I started looking for the direction that the sound was coming from. And it was from the southwest of the community, down by our old sewer lagoons, along a timber line down there, right on the Noble County, K County line, County Road. And it was so shocking, and it kind of gave me chills a little bit. And I turned around and I said, I don't know what that was, talking to myself. And there's some night lights here and there around the Wellness Center, around the Social Development Center. Behind the Senior Citizen Center is the food distribution program, and there's a night light there. So I'm looking at all these night lights and trying to figure out, is there something back there that's going to come through there. And I'm looking back north toward the clinic and toward the police station that's real close. And I'm like, this is pretty chilling for me to be going through this. And I'm walking backwards, still looking, and I get probably about half a block north in front of the clinic, and it did it again. The same kind of howling. And when I tell different ones about this through the years, I tell them it sounds like in the movies when those two boys are walking through the moors in the American Werewolf in London. That same deep-throated, guttural sound from that howl. And it was the second one that was just as loud as the first one. And I couldn't wait to get back into the community. And when I finally did, I just kept looking south, thinking something's going to be coming through the pasture, through the fields, under those lights or something. Your mind just kind of races when you're going through something like that. And I would tell different ones throughout the years about that experience. And I didn't have a problem telling them that because it happened to me. If it happened to somebody else or another family member, and I wouldn't be so readily to say, okay, that's what he heard or whatever, but this is what I heard, and I don't mind telling you that that's what I heard back then. And I can remember right now hearing the sound of that, whatever that was, and to me it'll always sound like some type of a wolf, a big wolf, that sounded like it straight out of the movies. That's how scary that was at that point in time.
I was about 7 years old to my uncle. He no longer is with us, and I wanted to share his story. Growing up, I lived in northern Michigan on 5,000 acres of farmland that backed up into state land. Nothing but miles of forest and pasture could be seen. Needless to say, it made us pretty tough, and it took a lot to spook us. We were all avid hunters, fishermen, and outdoorsmen. Being the only girl, I was raised as a tomboy, and I'm just the same. My uncle went off to join the military, becoming a senior NCO in a prominent Special Forces division of the U.S. Navy. He was 6'4", built like a wrestler, obviously skilled in survival tactics, and nothing rattled him. He was home on leave and went out hunting as it was deer season. I remember him coming in the house shaking and crying, saying he saw something in the woods. My uncle never cried. He was tough as nails and would tear someone to shreds before he let them make him cry. My grandmother tried to get him to make sense, but he kept saying he saw a Bigfoot mixed with a wolf. My granny immediately got my grandfather, and he rounded up the rest of the guys hunting. A few male cousins, my uncle, who was still terrified, But he went because he didn't want to be labeled as a chicken. Got all their shotguns and ammunition and saddled the horses to go clear the woods. Apparently, they were aware of the Dogman, but I was blissfully young and ignorant. They told me to stay inside, and for no reason was I to step outside of the house until they returned. I have never heard my dad or grandfather so serious, so I hid in my room. Sunset comes, and they still aren't back. I'm really worried at this point because they never stayed in the woods until after dark. Shortly, I hear the sound of horses running to the barn, and their voices. I was so relieved. They looked troubled when they came into the house, but didn't say anything. Probably not to spook me. At dinner, my dad laid down the law that I was no longer allowed to play outside or go to the barns alone. I had to have my grandfather with me at all times. Of course, I was upset by this and felt my independence was being taken away, but I obeyed. The next morning, my dad and grandfather taught me how to shoot. I knew it was serious. I overheard the adults talking the next day. Apparently, there were tracks where my uncle had his sighting, bigger than any wolf could ever make, but they were definitely dog tracks. As I said before, we were avid outdoorsmen and hunters. We can identify tracks easily, but these couldn't be identified. About 8 feet up in the tree were claw marks. No Michigan bear could make those. We also saw claw marks about the same height on multiple trees throughout our property. Had cattle mutilated, and not in the way a coyote or bear would, and lasted that whole winter. We lost about 30 or 40 cattle that winter, all of them mutilated, all with the same wolf dog tracks in the snow. I really feel like this experience changed my uncle. After that experience, he never was the same. He went from not ever drinking to never seeing him without a bottle of Jack. And his eyes were always haunted. His personality changed drastically, and he never went out in the woods again.
Boy, do I have some info that's going to blow some of your minds. But first off, if you're not a believer in cryptids like, Sasquatch, Dogman, werewolves, whatever, just scroll now because, this isn't going to be interesting to you. Here we go. So, I am subscribed to a channel on YouTube. It's called Dogman Encounters with Jeff Nadoli. And I've been subbed to him for a while, and I've gotten so much information from this channel. So if you're not subscribed to him, go on YouTube and please give him a sub, whatever. So about 3 years ago, a whistleblower came to him, and this whistleblower was given permission by the government, the good guys, the white hats, to leak this information out, to keep the public informed that Dogman and werewolves and Sasquatch exist, and to also keep us, if we know about it, we can be more, aware of our surroundings, and just to keep us, as safe as possible. With that said, I'm not saying werewolves and Dogman and Sasquatch are evil either, okay? And you'll understand why I say this. So he came to Jeff and with information. So his name is Victor Chip Johnson, and he was in the military, part of the Black Ops program. There's a list of things under his belt. So what Victor's job is, though, is he's basically a hunter of werewolves and Bigfoot and Dogman. Now, not because they're bad, though. See, the bad government has a program, a breeding program with Dogman and werewolves. And werewolves are not like what you think. They're not shapeshifters. They do not turn into humans. They are just werewolves. They're like a bigger, badder version of a Dogman, okay? And faster. Excuse me. So, the government created this breeding program and they tried to do the Sasquatch, but the Sasquatch wouldn't take to the program. They wouldn't breed or anything, so they gave up on a Sasquatch. But they breed Dogman and werewolves. And before I say anything else, no, the government did not create any of these beings. These beings have been here way longer than the program ever existed. God created them, I guess. But no, the government did not create these beings. Yes, these beings are made of blood and flesh. They're not from another dimension either. And that surprised me because I thought they were. They're master camouflagers. They can blend right in. You wouldn't even know if you walk by them. You would not know. That's how good they are at it. So they breed these though. They obviously realized that these things existed and they kidnapped them basically and started breeding them. And this started around 1952. That's how long this program's been around. And Victor became part of the program in 1985-ish. I might not be exact with the dates, but I'm close. So they created that they're breeding these beings to be basically super soldiers. I mean, there's so many stories I could tell you. I don't have enough time. Like they fought in the Vietnam War. There are some mind-blowing stories with that. And the war in Iraq. Anything after 1952, they were in that. Any wars after 1952, they were in that war. They used them to fight dirty, basically. But now Victor's job though is, because he's not a bad guy. Like there's obviously good people working for this program to try to so his job is to, when he gets word that someone was killed by a dogman or a werewolf, his job is to go out there and hunt them and put them down to keep us safe. With that being said though, not all dogman or werewolves they're not bad. Like, my heart breaks for them because in this program, they are not treated right. They're put under mind control. They're horrible conditions. They also train them to be hitmen. They basically are breeding and training these beings to be monsters. Okay. But they're not all bad. And there are wild ones. Like I said, they've been around way longer than this program ever even thought to exist. And so are the wild ones aggressive or not? Like, it depends on the being, really. But for the most part, Victor said, okay, so Sasquatch, not aggressive towards humans. You might find one here or there that are, and they're capable of murder, but most are non-aggressive to humans. Believe it or not, female werewolves are most likely to be non-aggressive to humans. Now, the dogman and the werewolves, they can be aggressive, but it depends on the being. Some aren't aggressive. This is going to blow your minds. They can speak. They can understand you. When you talk to them, they will understand what you're saying. And if they choose to, they can speak back to you. Isn't that insane? Sasquatch can't, though. They tried teaching the Sasquatch when they did try to have them become part of the program, but they just wouldn't take to it. They cannot learn English for some reason. They have their own language, yes, but they can't learn English, which is insane. But a dogman can, and a werewolf. But isn't that awful? So, I feel so bad for these beings. They're, literally breeding them to become monsters. But, so, with that being said, Victor is not going to kill a dogman or a werewolf that's not aggressive. His job is to kill the ones that have killed humans, and one less, murderous, being that was created by these, you know what I mean? So, werewolves are stronger than dogman, and faster than dogman. They are so strong, you guys, that they are capable of breaking through steel. That's how strong these beings are. The strongest of all three, though, the big three is Sasquatch. They are the strongest, and they can get past 12 feet tall and 800 pounds. It's insane. The thought of coming across something that massive, even if they are non-aggressive, I'd faint probably, wouldn't you? But this has got to stop. This is awful. I feel my heart breaks for these beings. And the reason why I made this video is to maybe give you, a lot of you think dogman, even werewolves, are just a bunch of murderous, demonic things. They are not demons, and they're not all murderers. For the most part, dogman, I don't really know as much on the werewolves, just from what I've learned from the channel. But dogman, I've read hundreds and hundreds of stories, and out of those hundreds and hundreds of stories, there was one here, one there, where someone got killed. They like to scare you. That's their personality. They're, but murderous demons? No, not at all. Victor actually was saved by two female werewolves from, one of the werewolves that was created in the program to be a murderer. They saved him from being killed by another werewolf, which is again, mind-blowing. But Victor's never once heard of a female werewolf killing anybody. Not one time. But you don't see them very often. They kind of hide out. It's very rare to come across a female werewolf. But Dogman too, though. I don't hear many stories with females. Like once in a while, it's mostly males, but yeah, so you can have a different light on them. And I have nothing but respect for these beings, and my heart breaks for them. And I just want you to, understand them a little better, not just have that stereotype of them. You know what I mean? And just want you to know this information. So yeah.
I know. He's pacing us.
Okay, so it's something, a dog or what? ¡Oh, la verga! I got it on video, wait. Yeah.
Oh, are you reading me? Come in. Hello?
Thank you for watching. If these Dogman encounters sent a chill down your spine, make sure to subscribe and drop your thoughts in the comments below. As always, stay safe, stay aware, question everything, and remember, out there in those woods, something might be watching.